Okay, now we get to our gospel reading, which comes from Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do, for I do not have space to store my harvest?" And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God.'" Okay, that's a strong parable from Jesus. Okay, so let's just look at this. So someone in the crowd is calling out to Jesus. So again, it's like I kind of like this image. There's a show. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Chosen, and I like it. I don't like everything about it, but I like the show a lot, and I watch it. And one of the things that I particularly enjoy is the way that it seems like Jesus comes about some of his teaching. I don't necessarily know what the way that he taught was all the time, like whether it was just always like lecture style, or in this particular case and in the show, there are certain scenes where he's just like sitting down and teaching his disciples, and someone comes along and like they just keep listening, they keep coming closer, and they want to listen to his teaching, which prompts them to ask some questions about, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? So this person, perhaps in the crowd, is just like, "Well, hold on a minute." And when he's asking this question, of course, for us as Christians, we're just like, "Oh man, that's not the right question to ask. That's not the right question to ask Jesus." He talks about money, he talks about all kinds of things, and the way that he talks about money, he's not gonna really like this question. But for this person, maybe in a way, he's just like, "Well, what? This is all I can think about." You think of actually. So the first reading from Ecclesiastes, the sense of all his days, sorrow and grief are his occupation. Even at night, his mind is not at rest. So for this person who is just consumed with like this desire for money, and possessions, and perhaps even as a matter of justice, perhaps, he's just like, "This is all I can think about." And so it's like, fine, if I finally find someone who's got like teaching with authority, and it's like he can help me with figure out my problem that I've got here. So like maybe this person who asked the question is good natured, maybe just misled. It's also possible that this person just is clueless. Who knows? The whole point here is that it's someone from the crowd, and that someone from the crowd could just as well be you. It could just as well be me, asking questions that we think make sense. And from the Lord's divine perspective, he's just like, "Oh man, let's talk about this, and let me share with you the reality of what's going on here." So who knows? But nonetheless, he asked this question: "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." So there's just like this thing. And of course, we know that this is the type of thing that actually still gets worked out today. Still causes problems today. It causes divisions in families. It causes all kinds of strife and bitter wars and jealousies and lawsuits and all kinds of crazy things. It's crazy how this question reverberates throughout history. It's so prevalent. And so in some ways, even while we can hear the question or the request and think like, "Oh man, I don't know if that's the right thing to ask Jesus about." At the same time, perhaps like hearing it is like, okay, if I'm honest, maybe I'm curious about it, And so like I'm kind of tuning in. And so then Jesus' reply again is rather stark. Like, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" And then he just like turns to the crowd. So like this person hears, Jesus looks right at him and is just like, that's not my job. My job isn't to arbitrate between you and your family about the inheritance. But then he turns to the crowd. He's like, "Okay, here's the deal, you guys." As though Jesus can see in his heart. "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." That word greed, I don't remember what it is in Greek, but it means insatiableness. Insatiableness? Yeah. It means that I have this strong desire to have more than what is due to me, what is owed to me. This sense of avarice, greed, insatiableness, this sense of like, once I get a taste of whatever possession, in this case money, once I get a taste of it, I just can't get enough. I can't get enough. And again, maybe we know people like that. Maybe we are like that sometimes. But that's what the sense is like, be careful, take care to guard against all greed, against all insatiableness. For though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. It's not all your life is. As though, in some ways, the Lord is answering Koheleth from the first reading, who just, like, it seems like he's summing his life up in his possessions and then recognizing that at the end of his life, he has to leave all of his possessions behind. And he's like, what good was this life? As though Jesus is like, no, you don't understand. Your life is worth more than your possessions. And so you actually don't have to get to the end of your life and wonder about the emptiness of it. Your life is not, it doesn't consist of your possessions, of your toil. Of course, it includes those sorts of things, but it is so much more than that. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. Like, I don't know when Ecclesiastes was written, but you can think of like 500 years later, the Lord's just like, I've been waiting to answer Koheleth. Who knows if that's actually what's going on. Okay, so then that leads Jesus into this parable. And of course, we know that parables are these like riddles that Jesus tells that sometimes seem easy to understand, but oftentimes have something to them that we wouldn't expect necessarily. And so there's going to be something in this that it seems like it makes sense to our ears, to our modern day sensibilities. But then Jesus is going to turn it and say, it's not quite it. So let's just think about this. So a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. So again, it's a different type of economy than what we have today. We would say like there was a rich man who stored up his retirement fund, and so like there was just more than enough in his retirement fund. Like he had just loaded it up. So there's this huge amount. For this man, it's just like we deal in produce, in material things. And so like there's this abundant, bountiful harvest. He asked himself, so that's an important thing. He asks himself this question, like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? What shall I do? I don't have space. Like I have so much stuff. I don't have space for all of it. So I know what I'm going to do. So then again, he says to himself, this is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns, build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, now as for you, right? So it's just like this really strange dynamic that this person is having with himself. And yet, I don't know. Maybe I'm off base, but you can wonder how many times, I recognize this in myself sometimes. I have conversations with myself rather than having conversations with God and asking him, like, what should I do with this? With this time, with this resource, with this money, this possession, this gift, whatever. Instead, I want to ask myself, like, what should I do with this? What do I want to do with this? So then he says, now, as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry. So this man is so consumed with his excess, with his abundance, that it leads him actually into sin, capital sins, the capital sins of laziness or sloth and gluttony. In other words, like to rest, eat, drink, and be merry. This is like he's encouraging himself to indulge, to hoard his resources and to indulge, which is a fascinating thing. So I think it's St. Basil the Great, one of the church fathers. He talks about how this man's response could have been, should have been, I've got all these possessions. Now what? How about I feed the hungry? How about I open up my barns and invite the poor to come and partake of them with me? That seems like it would have been a response more fitting to the gospel. But as it is, he gives this response, and then this is where the Lord turns it on him, on us, I guess, on this, because he's telling the parable to the crowd. He says, "You fool." That again, that's just like, can you imagine standing, like doing something that you think is really awesome, and you're short-sighted, and so like whatever, and you stand before like your father. Think of your father. Maybe some of us actually experience this, but ultimately our father is like an image of God. But think of like standing in front of your father, like showing him like, look what I did, and he just looks at you and he says, "You fool, you shouldn't have done that." So this is like how this man is going to stand before God when he ends his life. God is going to say to him, like he's going to say, like, isn't it awesome what I did, God? Like what I did and what I decided to do for myself? And the Lord is just going to say, "You fool, this night your life is going to be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? They're not yours. They're not yours. You can't take them with you. You can't be judged." So it's just like it turns the whole thing of just like I got to be careful about what I'm doing with my life. And the thing here is that Jesus isn't necessarily like, he's not necessarily condemning accumulation of goods, not necessarily, but he's condemning this attitude of I got to accumulate for myself. I gotta get mine. And I got to make sure I've got more than enough for myself. and I'm going to decide what I do with that more than enough for myself. So this greed or this insatiableness or this covetousness that this man clearly is experiencing. And so then Jesus finishes with this phrase. It's called a nimshal, which is just like the hook of the parable, which he doesn't always give one, but here he does. He says, "Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." The whole point of what Jesus is getting at is like, look, if we seek to accumulate riches for ourselves, that is so dangerous. It is so contrary to what I have come to be about. Because I have come, we're actually going to hear this in our second reading, I have come to establish a worldwide family that cares for each other, that looks out for each other. And if we're just storing up for ourselves, you've become a fool. You've become foolish. And you have lost sight of what matters to me, what matters to God. And because you've lost sight, you are actually, though you are rich in a worldly sense, you are poor. You are bankrupt spiritually. Think of 1 Corinthians 13, that famous passage that's read at weddings. But in that, St. Paul says, without love, I am bankrupt. Without love, I have nothing. There's nothing there. And what is that love? The love ultimately is love for God and love for neighbor. We've been hearing about this a few weeks ago. How we are to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so for those who seek to store up treasure for themselves and do not become rich in what matters to God, all that's left for them is to hear those two horrifying words, "You fool. You fool." And again, it's not a positive thing. It's not a pleasant thing. And yet the Lord tells us this as a warning so that we don't get trapped in it. Like that's the purpose of his teaching. So this man asked this question, maybe in innocence, maybe not in innocence. Who knows? Who knows what was going on in his mind? But Jesus takes it and he's like, okay, this is a really good teaching moment. We got to be really careful. Take care to guard against greed. Against all greed, he says. Not just like don't let a little bit in. Take care to guard against all greed. If you're storing up treasures, make sure you consult the Lord to say, how do you want me, God, to use this for the benefit of the people around me? How do you want me to use this for the benefit of your kingdom? And again, this is not a condemnation of storing up treasure or storing up wealth, but it is to say, like, what's your purpose in doing this? What's your intention for doing this? And is it godly in any way? And if you say that it's godly, how do you know that it is? Like, what can you point to from the words of Jesus, from the scriptures, from the tradition, so that you can say, like, okay, this is found here, and this is what I'm all about. Again, the whole point here is like, I want to be rich in what matters to God, more than I want to be rich in any other sense. I want to be rich in what matters to God. And the way to do that is not to turn in on myself and make decisions for myself, but the way to do that is to turn toward the Lord and ask him to help me make those decisions through the consultation of his church, through the consultation of his word. Beautiful. It's challenging. It's really challenging, and maybe uncomfortable for some of us. But it's okay. The Lord is with us, and he's here to guide us and to teach us. Okay, there we go. So we got a really great second reading, actually. Really great. I think I'm more inclined to preach about the second reading this coming weekend when we get to it. But anyway, so tune in for that one, and we'll see you soon. Peace.